S Viktorom Orbánom bojoval spoločne za nové slobody. V 89. teraz stoja na opačných brehoch a patrí k jeho kritikom. Maďarsko o rok čakajú voľby a Viktor Orbán sa pre istotu pripravuje aj na prehru, posilňuje si pozíciu v inštitúciách a likviduje opozíciu cez svoje mediálne impérium. Viac už s Miklošom Harasztim. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you.
Is it even possible to run a fair election against Orbán?
Well, actually this time seems to arrive the first chance to beat him, because, as you might have heard, the unprecedented togetherness of unlikely bedfellows of opposition parties from right to left, and that mathematically creates out of Hungary's super disproportional election law and almost American type two-party election law, and that mathematically gives the chance.
But would it be fair?
If it would be fair.
I mean, if the election are fair.
Oh yeah, that really depends again on opposition, because Hungary's autocracy has not reached yet a more Eastern pattern, which is what once when I worked for OSCE as an election observer in 2012 in Kazakhstan, and my driver spoke about the unfairness of the elections, and I said, oh, we have that kind of tricks in Hungary too. And then he said, Comrade Miklós, don't joke, in your country they count the votes. Yeah. So the point is, they have yet counted the vote. But if the opposition manages to send observers to every of the 10,000 districts, then it is possible to have a fair election. Mm. But it will be so close that it's obvious to think that there will be tricks if there are no opposition observers at every district.
So it's fair to say that it might be free but not really fair?
Well, it has not been fair ever. Some observers, international observers, claimed it was free but not fair. Not fair because none of the supervisory organs, bodies have been independent, have been left independent during the 10 years of Orbanism, and because the financial chances and the media chances of the opposition were super unfairly difficult and disproportional. But it was fair in the sense that almost no party was excluded by an Eastern pattern from elections. Mm-hmm. Only Jobbik, the former far-right party, was robbed all of its finances by the independent auditing office of the government based on a false claim. But otherwise, all candidates and all parties could run. In that sense, it was free.
So, as you mentioned, the opposition teamed up in an alliance, which is pretty wide, actually, from formerly far-right Jobbik to centrist liberals. So, who will actually lead the charge? Do we know?
Actually, that's an open question. I could ask you the same question. Nobody can guess, because there is it is innovation 2 in 1. Only the first part of the innovation is that they are together now. The other part is a primary between them, which was unthinkable earlier, because internationally primaries are done either inside one party or between very strong allies. And this now will be the case, and the pledge of the joint opposition is to put one candidate against the Fidesz candidate at every possible place, in the district, in the prime ministership, and in the national list. the prime minister primary, the prime ministership primary, will be even 2 rounds. So it's a real big race, and only at the end would I be able to answer your question.
Lately, Viktor Orbán seized control of Hungary universities, making it harder for the future government. His people will have unlimited authority over the schools. There are now foundations who are running the universities. So let's say the opposition won the election. Will they be able to undo these kind of things Viktor Orbán already did to keep the power in the country?
It's another great puzzle, but the public opinion of the opposition, of the constitutional lawyers who favor the opposition, great debate is right now, as we are talking, going on in Hungary about this same question you asked. And a growing opinion is that because of the total steal of rule of law by the Orbán regime, some remedy will have to be going outside the inherited law, which is again an unprecedented thing, and obviously in a normal democracy would count as discountable because it's part of rule of law to also follow the written law.
Yeah.
But because of Orbán's misuse of the 2/3, that is royal power inside parliament, because of this, he changed absolutely every independent supervisory position in the state, and named for 9 unprecedented years all people. So you simply cannot name any supervisory name nominally, constitutionally independent institution that would not be led by his people. And also he multiplied the number of 2/3 laws, including normal economic decisions, including for example, decision making about universities, whatever. And his new constitution named a new way of electing those bodies. Already by the nomination, the question is decided that it will be a Fidesznik. So the point is, it has to be changed. Which way? It's not safe to say now, but it is safe to say that it can happen only if the opposition announces it beforehand. That would give some legitimacy, because if they win by having announced it earlier, that would mean that the mandate was given for it to them.
Yeah. Would you still describe Hungary as a democracy? Because a watchdog called Freedom House, in its most recent report, lists Hungary as hybrid regime, and Hungary now scores worse than Serbia. So is it still democracy?
No, it's not. I would say it is a classic illiberal. I'm sorry about this.
It's fine.
Let me change the setting. So I would not call it a democracy, because I belong to the school that only a liberal democracy, meaning with division of powers, with independent institutions, with protection of free speech, with protection of education freedoms, can be called a democracy. However, that's part of the problem, that this type of undemocracy cares very much about seemingly following the rules. That's the trick. That's the task. For new democracies, for the what scientists call the third wave of democracy, which is the majority of the world democracies. And all of them seem to being enticed down this road to illiberal democracy. How to tackle this? So Hungary, which used to be, before urbanism, a pioneering a new democracy after '89, could be again, if this comes out successfully, could be again a pioneering country of how to tackle this modern type of undemocracy.
So for years you accepted corruption in the EU funds. For years they were unable to do anything at all for 10 years. How much of this is the fault of the EU and the non-response of the EU?
Well, it is a lame thing to blame the European Union, because every country is responsible for their own democracy, and if it has not been a big scandal enough to once in the propaganda blaming the European Union for everything that's possible, and actually enforcing that line on the Visegrad 4. On the other hand, getting all the money and making their personal purses and the party purses tick out of that money, then you can blame the country for it. But on the other hand, I would be inclined to say yes to your question. The European Union was as unprepared for this wave of undemocracy in the new democracies as our countries have been, and they have to find yet the way to prepare. I mean, there was a scrutiny on the way towards membership, but in the rules that is not built in at all to check for democracy for those who are already inside.
So in the upcoming election, is Orbán still relying on votes from Hungarians living outside of Hungary? So last time he won mostly because of votes from Romania, for example. So is he still relying on that?
Very much so, and actually Slovakia was in the case in point, because he hoped that his deal with Mr. Matovič, Sputnik for citizenship, for Hungarians who live inside Slovakia, was part of his big hope that he can join at least part of the Hungarians in Slovakia, to those who can have a voting right inside Hungary. Orbán was on record claiming that the two-thirds majority in parliament was thanks to a broad Hungarian vote. So he may have hoped that this will be added. But the rest of the Hungarian citizens outside Hungary are very much still in the picture. They have, as you may have heard, they have the right to vote by mail, but Hungarian citizens living abroad, not the new citizens who got the citizenship because of Orbán's law, but those who have a domicile at home, they don't have the right to vote by mail. So this is one of the demands of the opposition, that vote by mail should be available for all citizens.
You've mentioned Igor Matovič and the Sputnik case. So was Viktor Orbán using Igor Matovič? Was Igor Matovič naive and used by Viktor Orbán in this case?
I have to answer unequivocal yes.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
From your perspective, as a person that knows Viktor Orbán personally, what are his...
I'm sorry, can I add something to this?
Yes, of course.
Matovič at least believed that he also gets something out of that actually unsuccessful deal, because he believed that Sputnik is a great issue. So he believed Orbán's domestic propaganda, which claimed that Hungary is successful against COVID because of Sputnik, which was not the case, and was not successful. And Sputnik is actually universally also disliked by Hungarians, but for a while the system was that if they wanted to choose between shots, then they had to wait enormously long
Much
list.
longer, yeah.
So that's why the numbers were a bit higher. So Orbán would have got the citizenship law out of the deal. Matovič would have got Sputnik, which proved to be a zero entity.
So you know Viktor Orbán personally. What are his motivations? Is it ego? Is it the power? Or is he deeply, seriously convinced about the values he has in his propaganda, his narrative?
No, he's a world champion of cynicism. He doesn't believe in anything but power. And ununderstandably, incomprehensibly for me, also in personal wealth. Because I consider that in the long run a big political mistake. The second part of his devotions. The first part, he's Machiavellist by the book. Whatever works, whatever goes. I remember when I was still in parliament, in the first cycle of Hungarian parliament, out of the faction meeting of his caucus, a young Fidesz MP came out crying. And he said, Viktor Orbán told me I should never enter the building again if I keep proposing things that are not at least 51% popular. You know, so he used to be a very, very conscious populist, working by lumping together issues that were at least 51% popular, and that he doesn't know about directions. I mean, left and right. He claims, of course. Well, right now, his identity, because he's in the age already, seems to be cementing around right-wing issues, but he's unscrupulous left-wing if that is needed.
What would it mean for Hungary if he won again? Would it destroy what's very few things that's left in Hungary that are free, that are not under Fidesz control, or what would be the future of Hungary?
It is not possible for him anymore because of the opposition lumping together. It is not possible anymore for him to have a two-thirds, that is royal rule. When he was prime minister for the very first time, it was from 1998 to 2002, he didn't have the two-thirds rule, and therefore he went around laws. But that wouldn't work either anymore. So in the unwished for case, he comes out victorious in this very close race that is waiting for Hungary. Even then he will not have anymore the royal power which made his alterations of Hungary's democracy possible. So his age is over in any case, in this sense. But I wish that the A solution comes in, not the B solution, which is that the opposition comes out victorious.
You said in 2018, and I will quote you now, Kaczynski, Fico and Zeman may also accelerate their attempts to emulate the Hungarian electoral system because an important key to Orbán's success is the electoral system he devised for himself. It was before the murder of Jan Kuciak. Robert Fico had to step down as a prime minister. We had new elections, so it's different now. We have a new government, but we were shocked to learn the scale of corruption in courts, politics, police. Isn't it dangerous on the same level as changing the electoral system if the institutions itself are corrupted? That we can see the example of Slovakia, that it's not only about the electoral system, but we have huge problems even though the electoral system wasn't touched by Robert Fico.
Listen, I am a Hungarian envious of Slovakia. So I would like to boost the patriot in you, the democratic patriot, because even if you have corrupted institution corrupted the classic way, which is some leaders get caught by human flesh, that by power. That's the classic way. It's nothing compared to the kind of corruption which is, legally speaking, not corruption because they simply pass a law. And then whatever they do becomes legal, because it's on the books. And therefore, the most important element is to have a proportional electoral law in countries where society consists of many factions, where multi-party system is natural because of the sociology of the country, because of history of the country, because you have right and left and green and whatever. And in those countries, typically all new democracies, a proportional electoral law cares about the revolving stage working. A proportional electoral law, whatever bad it brings in election, in the next election it can go away. And then you can have the today's Slovak scene, which is a kind of self-reparation of democracy. But if you have a two-thirds or law made even more difficult by a disproportional electoral system that gives unearned advantage to the leading party and the power to change all the laws and institutions, then your democracy might go away for generations. So at least for several elections. And therefore, it is very dangerous. So don't let your proportional electoral law change. And thanks God, this was the case in all Visegrad countries except Hungary. And Hungary is partly my fault, because I was in the team that set up an originally quite disproportionate electoral law in Hungary. For many reasons, let me not dwell on why we decided in 89-90 to have a disproportionate electoral law. There were several fears tied to the fact that we were a pioneering democracy at that time. Mm-hmm. But learn the lessons. Don't change the proportional electoral law. That's a final safeguard of your democracy.
Well, that was actually my last question. What lesson we could learn from the Viktor Orbán's time, age? Yeah. what would you say? So it's just the electoral system?
Yeah, you can have a talented, evil leader who is not at all driven by any values. But it's not a trouble if you believe in mathematics and you don't believe that electoral law is a mere technicality. In Europe there are 3 disproportional electoral laws, not only 2. It's Britain and Hungary. In the Western world, it's the Anglo-Saxon countries, maybe, and Hungary. So it was a lateral mistake because it calls out the evil of if you have a trash heap and you have several cocks, looking for food, then if you allow one cock to come out victoriously, then he is the ruler. So the point is, don't let it happen, and preserve democracy as a revolving stage, and electoral law is crucial. Also, media freedom has to be preserved by any price, because when I used to be when I was in politics, it was in media, and I always preached inside Hungary as much as outside Hungary that the media is not penetrable for would-be dictators. My point was that in Hungary, until Orbán's 2010 victory, the revolving stage changed against the fact that conservatives always claim that it's liberals who rule in the media. And it was not the case. The revolving stage worked. And now Orbán proved that if you totally deprive a country from meaningful pluralism, and you fill that conquered media space with unabashed two-bit propaganda, bad, wrong, we, them, that kind of, and always looking for enemies, then you can preserve with that a certain base which you can then multiply via electoral law and other tricks. So this circle of populism, which is first grabbing popularity, with the help of that popularity you grab power. With the grabbed power you conquer more media, more institutions. With the help of that you produce more and more power. That should be precluded by caring about these values very early on. And I believe that once a new democracy goes through this lesson and understands that freedom can be lost via elections, not from outside, like our countries in Visegrad 4 has always lost freedom from the outside, but it can be lost democratically, so to say, and learns how to handle that crisis, then it's a ripe Western-type democracy. And I like to think about Slovakia like the only example actually in Visegrad at the moment, which you have done already in the Maďarský case, and seems to be already in the immune reactions of Slovakia. So I am happy that the good example is produced even inside Visegrad 4.
Well, let's hope it stays so. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Ak chcete podporiť kvalitný obsah, ale aj naše videá, najlepšie urobíte, ak si predplatíte denník SME na sme.sk/predplatné. A ak chcete, aby vám na budúce žiadne nové video neušlo, stačí, keď nám dáte na našom YouTube kanáli denníka SME odber a zapnete si upozornenia. Ďakujeme.